Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. A group of American business leaders met China's President Xi Jinping in Beijing in line with the Asian economy's efforts to boost foreign investments amid bilateral tensions. Blackstone founder Stephen Schwarzman, Qualcomm president and CEO Cristiano Amon, Bloomberg chair Mark Carney and FedEx president Rajesh Subramaniam were among the attendees. The executives were in Beijing to take part in the annual China Development Forum. Chinese President Xi Jinping told America's top business executives that China's growth prospects remain bright and its economy has not peaked yet. Now, this was a very important geopolitical meeting with China trying to turn sentiments in its favor, telling the world we are very much in business, our growth story is intact. Joining us now to take this forward is Christopher Bedder, Deputy Director of China Research at Gavikal Dragonomics, and Inar Tangent, Senior Fellow at the Tahe Institute, founding partner of Center for China and the World, and Chairman of Asia Narratives. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Christopher, let me begin by asking you, how do you see this meeting? You had the Chinese Premier, you had President Xi Jinping meeting American businesses. Do you feel this meeting will turn the sentiments in favor, will bring business confidence back in the Chinese economy?
I don't think by itself it's really a game changer. I think what it is it's a signal to the United States. Right now, we're in a period where U.S.-China relations have actually been a little bit stable, but Xi no doubt has his eye on the future, and the future is the elections in November. And in particular, there's a good chance that Donald Trump might come back in the office. And he has explicitly threatened that he would levy very high tariffs on China. And that's really what's on the mind of a lot of Chinese policymakers right now. It's on the mind of a lot of business. So they're concerned about the environment in China, the policy environment in particular, why growth is so slow. But I think from the Chinese side, they're also worried about what's going to happen with U.S.-China relations.
Right. In our tangent, of course, U.S. and China relations is a cause for worry. And but the bright side of it, you had the World Bank president there in Beijing this week at the China Development Forum meeting. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is set to visit very, very soon. Would you say that U.S.-China ties are on the mend? And one call that came from the IMF chief was we need pro-market reforms in China. Do you think Xi Jinping will go that extra mile on reforms that some of the global businesses and the likes of IMF and World Bank are asking?
I think when it comes to reform,
wants to bring in outside investment, foreign direct investment. In terms of how Beijing looks at it, I think a lot of people are misled. Yes, relations between China and the U.S. are a little bit on the mend, but at the same time, you have instances where the U.S. Congress and Biden are passing laws and trying to sanction individuals and companies. You see this with TikTok, you've seen it in the past with Huawei, etc. So at this point, Beijing has pretty much given up on Washington. They want to have cordial relations, the door is always open, but they're going directly to business and also to the people. They want, in terms of the businesses, they see this as a kind of medium-term strategy where they talk about their markets, their growth, which was 1/3 of the total world's growth last year and will continue to be the major growth driver in the world, and then people-to-people exchanges to kind of do ameliorate this negative press that China seems to get on a daily basis.
Right. Christopher, coming back to you, we saw Tim Cook saying that he loves being in China. It's a very vibrant economy. They also opened up a new store and they announced an investment in China as well. Do you think companies like Apple, US businesses which were diversifying, are very keen on getting back lost market share, making sure that they continue benefiting from the Chinese economy and connections, supply chain connections with China?
I think they are to an extent. I think that what we saw was that during the COVID period, China obviously went into lockdown for essentially more than a year in 2022. I think that was a very low ebb for a lot of American businesses when it came to China. And I think that China has been positioning itself as now reopening, since last year, but really the economy really underwhelmed last year. So what we're seeing this year is that China's really doubling down on the narrative that it's reopening. And I think that there's also an element by which foreign businesses sort of need to both show Beijing that they're responding to that, but also they are to an extent interested in the market. The market is coming back for them, at least to a certain degree, relative to the past few years.
Right. In our tangent, the Chinese government has predicted a 5% growth rate for this year. But at the same time, there are concerns around domestic demand. What do you think are the steps that the Chinese government could take to boost that consumer demand on the ground? Because this is what many companies around the world would be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be jobs and also disposable income. Last year, disposable income in China grew by 6.2%. In the United States, it only grew by 4.2%. Unfortunately, though, it was disproportionate in terms of the haves got more and the have-nots did not. I mean, literally, the richest doubled their wealth, while the poor and the lower middle classes were really suffering just to pay their increased rents and groceries and things like that. In China, they're looking slightly differently. They want to put more money in the pockets of people lower down the scale, poor, lower middle class, and middle class people, who they think will be the key to driving confidence and also consumerism.
Right. Important point there in our tangent. Let me go back to Christopher. Now, Christopher, if we look at the optics of this meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping had also met American businesses a day after the San Francisco summit with President Biden. But here at the China Development Forum, which took place before the meeting with Xi Jinping, you had the Chinese premier addressing American businesses. Usually it has been at the level of vice premier. The optics of the meeting, do you think the optics of the meeting were encouraging, that here you have the Chinese leadership going that extra mile to reach out to businesses?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the message was just Xi showing up to this meeting, which he doesn't usually do. Usually it's the premier, in this case, Li Chang, would engage with foreign enterprises. So just the fact that Xi Jinping is meeting with them clearly sends a message to the American side that he wants stability in the relationship. And he said as much in his comments to the CEOs. I also think it was intended for American businesses. So there was an element of this that was directed at the US government. But clearly he wants to message to American businesses that the Chinese government is fundamentally open to business, which is really just not something that the US government, US businesses in particular, should really, that they've thought for quite a while. US business sentiment has turned pretty sharply against China in the past couple of years. And I think that Xi Jinping is making a pretty big effort here to try to reverse that.
Right. In our tangent, do you think this is a clear case of rapprochement with China reaching out to US? We know that the November election in US is just around the corner. It could very well be Donald Trump coming back to power as president of America, and US-China ties could be volatile once again. What is the message that Xi Jinping is sending out to the US government at this stage? And do you think there was a message for the Republicans there as well?
No, unfortunately, people think that for some reason that the Beijing would favor Donald Trump over Biden. Actually, both bring equal amounts of chaos from the Chinese perspective. What Beijing is doing, as I said before, is they're concentrating on a medium term, which is the economic side, all the businesses that they were addressing. I disagree with my colleague when he says that this is somehow American businesses have lost confidence in China. What it has been is that the U.S. government has been pushing policies which make it very difficult to see the future. Uncertainty is the death of business. So at this point, Beijing is trying to reassure American businesses and also businesses around the world that China is open and that it is willing and has the markets to make sure that they have a future. As far as the long term goes, that's all about people-to-people diplomacy.
Right. So we'll see how things go. But of course, it was a hectic diplomatic week in China, something that the world would be watching very closely in our tangent. And Christopher, thank you very much for joining us here on Global Eye, giving us your perspective on those crucial business meetings in Beijing. On that note, we take a short break here on Global Eye. But coming up, at least 143 people have been killed at a concert hall in Moscow after it was attacked by multiple gunmen who shot civilians at point blank. A discussion with former Indian ambassador to Russia, Kaval Sibal, on the other side of the break. Welcome back. You're watching Global Eye. At least 143 people have been killed at a concert hall in Moscow after it was attacked by multiple gunmen who shot civilians at point-blank range. They used assault weapons to kill civilians before setting the building on fire, causing the roof of the Crocus City Hall to collapse while concert-goers were still inside. This is the deadliest terror attack on Russian soil in 2 decades. Russian investigators said more than 100 people have been reported missing. Terror outfit ISIS claimed responsibility for the attack and shared a video by the gunmen as they stormed the building. But Russian President Vladimir Putin has accused Ukraine of carrying out the attack, alleging there was a window prepared for the attackers to escape to Ukraine. Ukraine has denied this. President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Putin of trying to turn the situation to his personal advantage. Russia has so far arrested 11 men in connection with the attack, 4 of whom are citizens of the former Soviet Republic of Tajikistan. Let me now go across to Ambassador Kaval Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. He's also been our envoy to Russia and currently Chancellor Jawaharlal Nehru University. Mr. Sibal, thank you very much for joining us on the program. How do you see the messages coming out of Moscow at this stage? You have the Federal Security Service, the FSB of Russia, clearly saying that this was the work of Islamic radicals facilitated by Western special services. What do you think of this?
Look, it's very difficult to give a definitive opinion. And we don't want to take sides in this matter. But the point is that the Russian president and the FSB director has taken a certain position with regard to the West's involvement in this and Ukraine's involvement in this. On the US side, they had very promptly said that Ukraine is not involved. So where does the truth lie? Now, if one were to make a very objective assessment of things, without taking a partisan position, one has to look a little back in history. Now, for many years, it's nothing new and nothing related to the Crocus concert hall attack. President Putin has been saying, and he repeated this in his interview with Tucker Carlson, that the CIA was directly involved in the uprising in the Northern Caucasus and in Chechnya, number one. Number two, he has been saying that, or the Russian side has been saying, not he himself, that after the ISIS was eliminated in Iraq and Syria, some elements of ISIS were transported by helicopters to Afghanistan. Now, if you look back, how did jihad come into our region? When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, then, Brzezinski was the architect of this. The US and Saudi Arabia and others, they mobilized the Islamic world, the most fundamentalists of them, the Wahhabis, to push back the atheist Russians. So they brought jihad to our region, which means that they had a lot of connections with these groups. Similarly, in Syria, Al-Nusra group and others have, in congressional testimony, this has been admitted, trained these fellows, knowing that they were extremists. Now, if you look at this background, then it would not be surprising that there is some hand of Western agencies in mobilizing these extremist Islamic fundamental elements to carry off this terrorist attack in Russia. Now, the other thing is, which is a bit puzzling.
Ambassador Sybil?
Yes.
Yeah, Ambassador Sybil, what I also wanted to ask you, the significance of the location chosen by the assailants, the Crocus City Hall, the importance of this in Russian history and Russian daily life, and also the manner, the ruthless manner in which the attack was carried out. What are some of the takeaways that you immediately see as a former diplomat?
Well, you know, the same thing happened in the Bataclan massacre in Paris. They chose a concert hall because that is where people are gathered in very large numbers. It's an easy target for would-be terrorists because it's not well protected. No, you know, normally people don't expect, administrations, governments, agencies don't expect such a terrorist attacks of such brutal nature. So I'm not surprised this happened. And this happened on a Friday, which again is to pattern. The thought that immediately crosses one's mind is that they have taken lessons from a leaf book that is already known about which are the kind of people you should target. Now, you know that they had also targeted many years ago the theater in Moscow. I've forgotten the exact name of the theater, where a very large number of people were killed, where the Russian forces intervened and used chemical gas in order to deal with the terrorists, but this resulted in the death of many of the people who were present in the hall. So this is to pattern.
Okay, Ambassador Sybil, I'd also like to ask you the manner in which Putin and the FSB head have reacted. Do you expect that there could be some sort of retaliation to this against Ukraine, against the West? Because here you have the Russian leadership clearly saying the Ukrainians are behind this, US is behind this, Britain is behind this, Europeans are behind this. Could this be used as an excuse to increase the offensive and maybe somehow rope in the US and UK directly into the war as well?
No, I don't think so. I think what they are saying is that there is a Ukrainian hand in this. And the whole thing was engineered by the West, especially the US, and they have mentioned Britain. Now, the fact is, there are two facts which are interesting. One is that these fellows who committed the acts, and you've seen the shots on television, they don't look like fundamentalists at all. They seem like low-level mercenaries who were doing this for money. And they were not interested in martyring themselves. In fact, they were trying to run away. And where were they running away to? They were running away to Ukraine, and President Putin has said some arrangements had been made to give them a window of opportunity to enter Ukraine. Now, therefore, one cannot at all reasonably rule out the implication of Western agencies and Ukraine in this. Though, of course, as I said, we have no proof of this unless unless Russia provides some tangible proof of this. We can only go by what they are saying. Now, with regard to retaliation, already they have attacked installations and energy production, energy plants in Ukraine. They've attacked the headquarters of the Ukrainian security forces. And these attacks will be multiplied. There's no doubt about this. But I don't think they'll carry the battle to NATO space, whether it is the United States, the UK. I don't think they that at all.
Ambassador, one final question. Right, Ambassador, we have just time for one question. Very briefly, India right now, and Prime Minister Modi recently had a conversation with the Russian leadership. He had a conversation with the Ukrainian leadership. The Ukraine foreign minister is now in India. What role, considering India is also caught up with election responsibilities right now, what role can India play at this juncture between Russia and Ukraine?
Nothing much, because unless the backers of Ukraine, which is the United States and Europe, the Baltic states and Poland in particular, and now France has said, the French president has said openly that they are willing to send troops into Ukraine, although this has been reacted to negatively by European countries, including Germany. But the point is that on the Western side, there still is a belief that if we keep giving more and more long-range weapons to Ukraine, they can reverse what is happening at present, and there could still be a situation where there is enough damage caused to Russia, which will force the Russians to come to the negotiating table. To my mind, this is an illusion.
Right.
This is not going to happen. But the outlook is not good at all, and we are actually running a grave danger of the whole thing escalating into some kind of a nuclear conflict. If the objective remains to impose a strategic defeat on Russia, which Russia will never accept. It is a very formidable nuclear power. And if its existence is threatened, anything can happen. And unfortunately, the West seems to think that Russia will never go down that road and they can keep escalating, that they don't want a conflict with NATO, and therefore they have window of opportunity.
Very important views there.
I don't agree with that, but that
Ambassador is right. Ambassador Sibbal, thank you very much for those views. Clearly, we are at the cusp of an escalation, as you're pointing out. We leave it there for the moment. Thanks once again for being with us. Before we wrap, a first high-level visit by a Ukrainian leader since the Russia-Ukraine war. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba is visiting India for 2 days. His visit follows an invitation by the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. Kuleba will be engaging in many meetings, including meetings with Jaishankar and the Deputy NSA to discuss matters pertaining to the bilateral partnership and cooperation on issues of mutual interest. There will be meetings with business leaders as well. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching and goodbye.